morning, Killer Bunnies, and welcome to Good Morning, Killer Bunnies, the fan show made by fans for fans. Up first, our featured product. So I don't know how common the term is, but I have heard the term cottage game, as in the kind of game where it's nice to bring it out if you were to own a cottage, for example. Something nice, something small, something cozy. So though we don't know someone who has a cottage, we do know someone who has a trailer, a nice summer getaway. And what better game to bring to a nice summer getaway than a Killer Bunnies game? Specifically, of course, Lite. A light game and a light getaway home. So that's exactly what I did. Now, mind you, I had taken the original carrots out of this version, but I had a duplicate copy of the starter deck, so I had put those first 10 carrots in to replace the ones that came with the game, as the ones that come with Lite are canon to the full set. Otherwise, this is the Lite set. So it only comes with one die, but for a light experience, that's enough. It comes with 110 cards, 10 of those being the carrots, of course, 10 small cards, and of course, the die. As you will see, the box is big enough to have nice little hidey holes for the die, and you can even lose some small cards in there as well. But if you take it apart, you can see that you are able to drop the die onto the floor. And that's exactly what we did. So I'm happy to say everything works as intended. Coming back to the cards, they are of a stock that we have come to expect from a quality Killer Bunnies game. So thank you very much, Jeff, for negotiating proper quality cards. Taking a look at the cards, you can see Narcoleptic Dog is one of those cards, as well as Kubrickian Glee. Sound like Kubrick. Kubrickian Glee. And there's that crab one. This is a newer trailer. And sometimes the floors that come with the trailer are not up to the snuff that we expect them to be, so sometimes you have to redo them yourself. And so we can see that we have taken it upon ourselves to redo the floors. And there we go. There is a bit of our work in progress. We're very proud of the effort we put into it. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed watching us redo the floors in this new trailer. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, bye! So I was going to do a bit of a special on the card Ice 9 from Quest of the Magic Carrot. But instead, I read the card and realized because I had come from Epsilon, I was playing the card incorrectly to the current canon. So here. Hey everybody. So today I was going to do a kind of deep dive into Ice 9. But then I actually read the card. So it turns out there's a big difference between the Epsilon version and the current canon Zeta Zeta version. So it used to be in the Epsilon version that when you played Ice 9 on a player, any card that that player had to roll a dice for, that card would automatically roll a 9. So if they played Surprise on themselves, they roll a 9. If someone else played a weapon on them, they roll a 9. So it turns out, for the last, how long has it been? 14 years or something, that is incorrect to the current canon. Here's what I mean. Ice 9 may be given to any player who must keep the card until he plays any other card that requires the rolling of dice, not including Zodiac, of course. All rolls of any dice will automatically have a value of 9 for the other card. Translation: when Ice 9 is played on you, you are now cursed that the next card you play that requires dice to be rolled, that card will be a 9. So going back to our previous example, yes, you can apply a surprise on yourself and you will roll a 9. However, if someone else plays a weapon on you, that card is unaffected. Instead, were you to play a weapon on another person, essentially that Ice 9 is attached to that card that you played. I'm taking this moment out because I can't be the only one. I can't be the only one who thought this. So, there we go. Mistake uncovered and shared with everyone else who is watching this. Okay, so instead of just leaving you off with a rant, I'm going to also throw in a pointless piece of trivia. For you Harry Potter fans, what is a magic carrot? In Harry Potter lore, a magic carrot potentially has the ability to turn a user's hair redder. This has been your Harry Potter factoid. And now you know the remainder of the tale. Now Carrot Top Academy with episode 1 of Tucker's Theoreticals.
Welcome to episode 1 of Tucker's Theoreticals. This episode presumes you have fundamental knowledge of the Killer Bunny Star set, so make sure if you are new to the game to refer to the Flows Fundamentals lecture series on that. This episode will be featuring calculations for relative value of cabbage units and water units. When playing Killer Bunnies, it's often a question, is it worth it to feed my bunny? For example, if there is a congenial bunny being fed here and he has to feed 1 cabbage and 1 water, how do we calculate whether or not it's worth it to feed it? Well, here's one method that players might use. The bunny is considered worth 10, so therefore, since he needs to feed 1 cabbage and 1 water, or he will starve to death, the cabbage unit is worth 5 and the water unit is worth 5. So therefore, it seems like a good deal to buy the cabbage and water because it costs less than the bunny normally. It would cost $3 per card. In this case, using the same comparison, feed the bunny 10 cabbage, 10 water. In general, you would want to pay $0.5 for each unit, which of course is a much less reasonable amount to pay. However, there is a slight problem with this. Relatively, not every bunny is worth 10. So when we're talking about relative value, we can't just simply say the bunny is worth 10, therefore the cabbage is worth 5. Having extra bunnies often drastically reduces the relative value of a single targeted bunny. If you have bunnies to spare, you're in no danger of not being able to play aggressive cards, so perhaps the bunny isn't worth saving. In fact, although counterintuitive, a bunny may even have a negative relative value. You might wonder how on earth is that the case? Well, we'll look at a scenario here. In this 4-player game, one player has a bunny triplet, and the other 3 players only have 1 bunny each. Therefore, the bunny triplet is a blatantly obvious target, or more accurately, a blatantly obvious threat. All opponents are prone to target it because of it. That player is playing 2 cards per turn. That's not very fair. I need to kill that bunny to make sure it doesn't exist. Let's look at a similar example, with only 2 differences. Instead of a bunny triplet, a player has 2 bunnies of different color and different type. Now, in most groups I've seen, the single bunnies are often considered the greater threats because removing them removes the opportunity for that one player to play aggressive cards. So previously the biggest threat was the triplet. Now the biggest threat is actually the single bunnies, not the double bunny. Most aggressive players will consider it less efficient to try to kill two bunnies over trying to kill one bunny for the same result. Therefore, in several groups, the bunny triplet actually has negative value. Of course, a bunny having negative value is highly group dependent. The situation I just described is what's common in the groups that I play in. Perhaps the situation will look very different in the groups that you play in, so you must be familiar with how your opponents will react. This is actually one of the foundations of the passive strategy attrition, where you purposefully attack your own bunnies and forcefully give your bunnies away when playing them. So if you have less bunnies than your opponent will likely be considered a target, especially if they have a bunny triplet. Therefore, you won't be a target, and you gain large value for that. So let's revisit relative value method number 1, now that we know that. If we do not know what the bunny is worth, how can we calculate how much the cabbage and water is worth? The answer is, it's very difficult to do so. Since relative value is group dependent, anything measured in relative value is worth exactly as much as the player can convince the opponent it is worth. Therefore, we do not know what it is worth, but perhaps we can convince our opponents that it's worth something. Let's look at a second method of relative value. A feed the bunny 1 cabbage 1 water. We are guaranteed, at least in the starter set, to have to spend $3 on the cabbage card and $3 on the water card for a total of 6. That means that card is worth $6. With the Gorge the Bunny, we don't know how many cabbage or water cards we'll need to buy. There's 2 variables in there. So, how many cabbage and water cards can you convince your opponents that they'll need to buy? And will they try to go for it, or will they consider the bunny dead and let it starve? These are very difficult questions to answer, which makes very complicated strategies available. Perfect for this type of lecture. Let's consider one other method. It's usually considered the most objective method, actually. A cabbage card costs 3, normally. On average, how many cabbage units will I gain from buying 1 card? That is a very good question that we will calculate soon. With this average, how much is 1 cabbage unit worth? It's very important to note that since once you buy a cabbage card, that cabbage card is no longer available, the average results change. So let's look at, this is the entire supply of cabbage cards in the starter set. So naturally, I wrote a simulation to handle this. Ignore for a moment the toggle for forever cabbage, and ignore the defense, the radish, and all of that. We're just going to cover the cabbage right now with this simulation. So, starting out, we have all of the cabbage available. That's the remaining supply entry right there. And the slider that you see represents a low price market, a regular price market, and a high price market. So notice, as the market decreases its price, so a cabbage card would cost 2, the cabbage units in play are worth less. At the very starting point, with the normal prices of the market and the full supply, a cabbage unit is worth about 1. Well done, Jeff, on balancing that. Now let's look at the same 3 cases, but this time somebody purchased the 10 cabbage units. As soon as that 10 cabbage unit is purchased, or randomly drawn I should say, the value of cabbage units goes up. So notice in the middle case, the value went up to $1.4 per cabbage unit. Now of course, since you cannot purchase individual units, this method mostly functions as a reference point for trading. So after somebody has purchased the 10 unit, then those units are worth some amount. We need to calculate the value so that we know what a fair trade is. This is how we can calculate that. However, this method does have one interesting downside. If the market is closed, cabbage and water units have infinite value. So keep that in mind while trading. If the market is closed, your opponents will be more desperate to trade for them. This has been the first episode of Tucker's Theoreticals, going over how he calculates the value of single cabbage or water units. And as always, Jeff bless.
That'll be it for this week. Thank you very much for joining us once again on Good Morning Killer Bunnies. If you have something you wish to submit, please send an email to thergcreation@gmail.com. Also, come join the Facebook group, the Bunny Circle. I essentially consider it to be my home for all things Killer Bunnies. So we'll see you next time, next week, on Good Morning Killer Bunnies. Bye. That'll be it for this week. Thank you for joining. Blah.